Your sister deserves it more. You stay home, my dad said when I surprised him with a luxury Greece trip for his retirement. So, I smiled, agreed, and made sure their dream vacation turned into the most humiliating nightmare they'd never forget. Hey, Reddit. I never thought I'd be the one posting here, but let's just say my family vacation gift turned into something none of us expected. It started as a simple retirement surprise for my dad, but when they decided to replace me with my sister, I figured it was time to teach them what being taken for granted really feels like. Buckle up. This story's got family drama, karma, and the most peaceful coffee I've ever had in my life. I, Millie M. Hull, 32, female. I work as a physician in San Francisco. I had been planning the Greece trip for 6 months straight, not for me, but for my dad. The guy was finally retiring after 40 years in construction, and I figured he deserved something big. I wasn't about to buy him a watch or some cliche plaque that says, "Best dad ever." I wanted him to see the world, the blue rooftops, the Santorini sunsets, the food, the sea breeze, the whole luxury experience. Flights, first class, hotel, cliffside suite with a private pool, tours, private driver, local guide, fine dining reservations, all under my name. The plan was simple. Surprise my parents at the airport, hand them their tickets, and tell them their daughter had officially one-upped every Hallmark commercial ever made. I got to the San Francisco airport early, holding a little sign that said, "Welcome to your retirement gift." Yeah, a little cheesy, but it felt right. They were flying in from Denver, and I hadn't seen them in person in almost a year. I was honestly excited. Their flight landed, people started pouring out, and then I saw them. Mom in her beige cardigan, Dad walking proud, like he still owned every job site he ever worked on. But right behind them came something that made my smile freeze midair. Jessica. They'd just flown in from Denver on Friday afternoon, and the Greece flight was booked for early Saturday morning. The plan was they'd crash at my place overnight before the big send-off. My 37-year-old sister, the same Jessica who still lived in my parents' basement, still figuring things out, still claiming she had back pain from too much gaming. She was rolling a pink suitcase the size of a fridge, waving like this was her celebration. "Hey, Millie," Dad called, grinning. "Surprise?" "Yeah, surprise." I forced a smile. What's she doing here?" Mom looked anywhere but my face. Jessica smirked and said, "Oh, didn't Dad tell you?" Dad chuckled like he was announcing something adorable. "Your sister needed some fresh air, so she's taking your spot. You don't mind, right?" I stared at him, my little welcome sign slowly lowering in my hand. "My spot?" "Yeah," he said, patting my shoulder like it was no big deal. "You know how much Jessica's been through lately. We thought this trip would help her recharge." Recharge. The word hit like a bad joke. Jessica spent most days horizontal with a console controller in hand. What exactly was she recharging from? Her Wi-Fi. I smiled, but it wasn't my nice smile. Nice. I didn't realize my gift came with a replace the giver option. Dad laughed again, completely missing the sarcasm. "You're always so funny." Funny wasn't what I felt inside. It was more like, really, you're doing this again? But I'd learned a long time ago not to show that. You give them an inch of emotion and they'll twist it into guilt or pity for Jessica. So I stood there calm and collected, watching as my parents fussed over her like she'd just returned from war. Mom gave me that nervous half smile she always wore during these moments, like she knew it was wrong but didn't have the spine to stop it. "We thought you'd understand," she said softly. "You're always so busy with work anyway." Translation. "You're successful, so you don't get to have feelings." Jessica yawned and said, "Don't be mad, Millie. You wouldn't even enjoy all the walking and sun anyway." I looked at her suitcase, then at her. "Right. Wouldn't want to interrupt your busy rest schedule." Her smirk twitched for a second, and that alone gave me mild satisfaction. Dad clapped his hands. "Well, let's get moving. Millie, you got the car, right?" Of course I did. I'd rented a black SUV for the occasion. The irony of driving them to the luxury trip I paid for wasn't lost on me. Jessica climbed into the front passenger seat without asking, scrolling through her phone like she owned the car. Mom sat in the back, quiet, avoiding eye contact. I wasn't angry in the shouting sense. I'd passed that stage years ago. I was calm. Too calm. The kind of calm that comes when you finally decide you're done being the family's safety net. When we pulled into my driveway, Dad stretched his arms and said, "You always have the best place, daughter. You should be proud." "I am," I said, "especially since I worked for it." He laughed like I'd cracked another joke. As they unloaded their bags, I caught Jessica's phone camera pointed at herself. "Leaving for Greece. Can't wait for the beaches," she said to her 4 followers. I stood there, hands in my pockets, watching her post a trip she hadn't earned, with money that wasn't hers, on a vacation that wasn't meant for her. And as stupid as it sounds, I smiled, because right then, watching her pose in front of my car, I realized something. They might have replaced me for the trip, but I still held all the reservations, and that meant the game wasn't over. Not yet. I unlocked my place and started hauling luggage. It's funny how fast people turn into help-yourself tourists when someone else covers it. I dropped a suitcase in the guest room, another by the bathroom, and tried not to make a face when Jessica tossed a comforter on the living room couch like she'd claimed the best spot. "Your place is so cute, Millie," Mom said, doing that obvious nod. "So proud of you." Dad clapped me on the shoulder. "You did good, daughter. This will be great for Jessica." "Yeah," I said. "Glad you think so." I kept my voice light because yelling at 60 isn't productive, and tempting them with a scene would only turn it into more drama. There's a difference between punishment and spectacle. I wanted outcome, not noise. "You know Millie did all this, right?" Dad said, smiling like he'd built the itinerary himself. Jessica laughed loud and self-satisfied. "She's such a sweet sister." She looked at me like she expected a confetti cannon to explode from my chest. I smiled and went with it. Sarcasm is a fine tool, dull enough that most people don't notice the edge. "Yeah, I did the hard part. Picking the restaurants with comfortable chairs," I said. Nobody caught the jab. Mom nodded like I'd just complimented the salad. After dinner, I excused myself. I had a late-night meeting with my laptop, which was true in the sense that I was meeting whatever version of justice I could operate from a chair and a Wi-Fi connection. My travel account had been my thing for months. Every confirmation, every payment, every special request was in there under my profile. That was the point. When you're the account holder, you control the strings. And tonight, I plan to cut some. I logged in. The dashboard loaded with the soft blue of the travel site I used. The Greece itinerary was right there. Outbound flight, return flight, 3 hotels, 2 private transfers, a winery tour, a local guide for 2 days, all paid, all pretty. My fingers moved with quiet clinical efficiency. First, the hotels. I clicked into each reservation. Cancel, confirm. The system asked about refunds. Certain suppliers had non-refundable rates, but would issue partial credits. Fine. I didn't want them refunded. I wanted the illusion. I let some charges stand as credit in my account, so the paperwork would still look real if they glanced at it. For the rest, I canceled outright. Each cancellation generated a line item. Reservation canceled, confirmation. It felt practical. Next, transfers. Private driver gone. Tour operator canceled. I left a few small fees attached. Little financial breadcrumbs that would pad the look of legitimacy on the PDFs I'd create later. No fraud, no forged documents, just a lot of administrative clicks from the person in charge. The airline. That was the knife. I'd booked the outbound and return as separate one-ways, so dropping the return was painless. One click, the system asked me to confirm. "Are you sure?" it said, like some conscience in code. I hit confirm. When the cancellation showed as processed, I saved screenshots of each cancellation notice. I copied the old booking confirmations too, the ones that still showed the hotel name, the guide's email, the transfer code. Those originals would be perfect as props. People glance at a printout and assume it's the gospel. I planned to give them those props. Then I printed. I formatted the pages so they looked official. Headers, dates, little logos. Nothing forged, just screenshots and old confirmations that would convince anyone in a hurry. I slipped them into a clean white envelope and wrote in a careful hand, "Open when you land." One more touch. In my desk drawer, I found an old, expired company card, long dead, nothing active on it. I slipped it into a small leather holder with a note that said, "Backup card if you need it. Treat yourselves." I knew it wouldn't run for a cent, but it looked the part. I didn't want to scam anyone. I just wanted them to feel the sting of expectation. Then, reality. I tucked the envelope into a drawer where I'd grab it in the morning, checked the locks on the doors, and turned off the living room light. I went to bed with the same steady breathing I'd used to get through late nights at work. "Bon voyage, freeloaders," I murmured into the dark. The plan was set. The next day, I'd hand them their tickets, and they'd walk straight into it, smiling, excited, and totally convinced they were about to live my generosity. Morning came bright and annoyingly cheerful. Saturday, flight day. I got up early and decided to lean into the role of the good daughter. If I was going to pull this off, it had to look natural. I made them breakfast, the whole deal. The smell filled the kitchen, and by the time Mom walked in, I was halfway through plating. "Wow, someone's up early," she said, surprised. "Big day," I replied, flipping an omelet. "Can't have grease on an empty stomach." Dad walked in, rubbing his eyes, already grinning. "You're spoiling us." "Yeah," I said. "That's the plan." Jessica appeared last, still in pajama pants and holding her phone like it was surgically attached to her hand. "You didn't make oat milk lattes?" I handed her a mug of black coffee. "It's organic," I said. She made a face and sat down. After breakfast, I carried their luggage outside. The morning fog was burning off, the city humming awake. Just as I shut the trunk of the SUV, my next-door neighbor, Mrs. Lanson, walked out with her small dog. She smiled at the sight of the luggage. "Heading somewhere exciting?" Dad puffed up immediately. "Our daughter planned a Greece trip for us. Retirement celebration." Mrs. Lanson clapped her hands. "How wonderful! Greece! What a good daughter you have!" I grinned. "Oh, they're going to love every second of it." We piled into the car. The drive to the airport was easy. Saturday morning traffic was light. Jessica talked the entire way. Restaurants she had to visit, souvenirs she had to buy, what pictures would get the most likes. Mom asked if everything was confirmed. "Every last thing," I said. And it was true, just not how they imagined. At the terminal, I parked and started unloading. A porter came over with a cart, and Dad handed him a tip like he was already on vacation. I carried the envelope in my jacket pocket. It had their printed confirmations and the inactive credit card tucked neatly inside. Inside the terminal, Jessica immediately complained about the check-in line. "Can't you just do that priority thing?" she asked. "I'll handle it," I said, heading to the kiosk. I was still the booking holder, so the check-in system let me print their boarding passes and luggage tags myself. While I worked, Jessica started arguing with a staff member about her carry-on size. When it was finally our turn at the counter to drop bags, the airline agent smiled. "Heading to Athens, right?" Dad nodded enthusiastically. "That's right, my daughter set up everything. Private driver, hotel on the cliffs." The agent began typing, then looked up. "Where are you staying? Do you have a hotel reservation?" I jumped in fast. "Oh, it's through a local company," I said. "I booked it direct. Way better rates that way." I laughed lightly and she nodded, relieved not to need to chase details. "Got it," she said, printing luggage receipts. Crisis avoided. I glanced at Dad. He was too busy checking his phone to notice anything. After security, we stopped near the entrance to the gates. It was the usual pre-flight goodbye ritual. Mom checking her purse for the 10th time. Dad patting his pockets. Jessica snapping another photo. I pulled out the white envelope. "Here," I said, handing it to Mom. "Open it when you land." She smiled. "What is it?" "Just confirmations and a little something extra." I looked at Jessica. "Everything's prepaid, but just in case you see something nice, that card's loaded. Treat yourselves." Her eyes widened. "Seriously?" "Yeah," I said, straight-faced. "Consider it pocket money." Their flight was boarding soon, so they started moving toward the gate. Jessica gave me that smug smile, the kind that used to get under my skin when we were kids. "Try not to miss us too much, little sis." I smiled back. Not in the slightest. I walked back through the terminal, feeling lighter than I had in years. The drive home was calm. The city looked different when you weren't the one constantly giving. When I parked in my driveway, the house felt quiet in the best way. I poured myself another coffee, sat on the couch, and finally let out a breath. They were 35,000 feet in the air, smiling, convinced they were about to live my generosity, and I was home free, finally enjoying the first vacation that actually belonged to me. That peace lasted almost a full day, long enough for them to cross an ocean and the time zones. By the next morning, my phone started vibrating nonstop across the counter. Mom, then Dad, then Jessica, one after another, like an alarm I didn't set. I let it ring. Then a few minutes later, a text popped up from Dad. "We're here, but there's a problem with the driver. Call me." I smiled. "Problem with the driver, huh?" That sounded like the opening act. I didn't reply. 5 minutes later, another text. No one showed up. "We've been waiting over an hour. Please check." Then came the first voicemail. I hit play just to hear his tone. "Hey, daughter, not sure what's going on. The driver never came. Can you reach out to the agency and see what's happening?" He sounded calm, hopeful even, the kind of calm that doesn't last. Then another one followed. Mom, this time. "Sweetheart, the hotel said they can't find our reservation. Maybe it's under your name." That one made me laugh out loud. It was under my name, all right, just not active anymore. I kept the phone face down and started a load of laundry. By the time I came back, I had 7 new voicemails and a wall of text messages. I played the next one on speaker while folding a towel. It was Dad again, voice tighter now. "Millie, the hotel says the booking was canceled weeks ago. They're saying we need to make a new one. Call me back immediately." I didn't. Then came the first Jessica message. Voice note, of course. "What is wrong with you? The tours are invalid. The driver number doesn't work. And the airline says our return flight isn't even booked anymore. Are you kidding me, Millie?" I actually paused folding to laugh. "Guess they found out about the return tickets," I muttered to myself. More messages rolled in, one after another. "We're trying to reach the tour company. All canceled. Do you know how embarrassing this is? You're paying for this, Millie." I poured another coffee. The more they panicked, the calmer I felt. It wasn't even satisfaction. It was just quiet relief watching all the pressure I used to carry land where it belonged. A few hours later, another text came through from Mom. "We had to book an Airbnb. It's not great. Please call us." Attached was a photo. I opened it. They were standing in front of what looked like an ancient yellow apartment door with peeling paint. The caption read, "This is all we could find." Jessica's face in the photo was priceless. Wrinkled nose, hand on her hip, sunglasses crooked. I scrolled down to another message from her, furious this time. "Your stupid card doesn't work. It got declined at dinner. Did you actually think this was funny?" I took a sip of coffee, smirking. "Oh, I did," I said quietly. Then Dad again, voicemail 14, still trying to sound authoritative. "I don't know what game you're playing, but you need to fix this, daughter. You ruined your mother's trip. You need to call the airline and rebook us home now." Then Mom's voice, softer, shaky. "Millie, please call. Your father's upset. Jessica, we can't stay here much longer. The air conditioner doesn't work, and the walls are damp, and there are roaches everywhere." I listened, leaning back in my chair. Damp walls. Perfect. By evening, they'd apparently found Wi-Fi strong enough to send photos. Blurry pictures of their tiny room, a bathroom with cracked tiles, and a caption from Jessica. "You've officially lost your mind." That's when the group message from Dad came in, sent to both me and Mom. "We're buying tickets home early. This trip is over. Unbelievable. No thanks, no apology, just the same arrogance, like they were the victims of a freak weather event instead of their own greed." I didn't reply. I didn't even open it again. I muted the conversation, dropped the phone on the table, and stepped out onto my balcony. The air in San Francisco felt perfect. Cool, quiet, steady. The phone buzzed a few more times before it finally went silent. Hours later, curiosity got me, and I checked my voicemail again. Jessica's voice blared through like a siren. "I hope you're proud of yourself. We're stranded in Greece. Do you know how expensive this is? You owe us thousands, you jerk." I deleted it before she finished. That night, I made dinner for myself. Grilled chicken, simple salad, No one complaining about oat milk or portion sizes. I ate while scrolling through my photos from the last time I'd been near the ocean. Greece looked nice, sure, but peace of mind tasted better. Before bed, I checked my phone one last time. 47 missed calls, 17 voicemails, one text that made me grin before turning off the screen. It was from Dad. "You've gone too far, Millie. You'll regret this." I smiled to myself, stretched and whispered, "Already don't." Then I placed the phone face down, switched off the light, and slept like I hadn't in years. By the third day, I figured they'd made it back to the US. I was right. My phone started buzzing again. Voicemails, emails, and a few angry texts. I ignored the first 10, but one subject line caught my eye. "Hope you're proud. You stranded your own family." I opened it just for entertainment. It was from Dad. He wrote that their vacation from hell ended with pickpockets in Athens stealing from them at the train station, that they'd had to scrape together the money for one-way tickets home, and that I had disgraced the family name. I scrolled to the end where he wrote, "We were humiliated. I lost my wallet. Your mother's purse was stolen, and Jessica was crying at the airport. You should be ashamed." I wasn't. Instead, I poured myself another coffee and replied with one line, "Maybe next time you'll book your own trips." I hit send and went back to my clinic. 2 days later, things went from personal to public. I got a text from one of my colleagues. "Hey, everything okay? Your sister's posting weird stuff." I checked Facebook. Jessica had gone full meltdown mode. Long posts about toxic siblings, mental instability, and how I emotionally abused my family by canceling their trip. She even called me a narcissistic monster with control issues. The best part? The comments. Half our relatives were cheering her on, the other half asking what she was talking about. It was like watching a family circus online. Then came Instagram. She posted a picture of herself sitting on the edge of a dirty bed, the one from that moldy Airbnb, with the caption, "This is what happens when family betrays you." #mental health, #healing journey. I almost spit my drink laughing. The comments were filled with sympathy from strangers. I scrolled through the responses like I was watching a bad TV show. That night, things escalated again. My parents joined in. Dad wrote this massive paragraph under her post. "We raised a daughter we thought had morals, but money changed her. What she did to her own family is unforgivable." Mom commented right under it with a sad face emoji and "Please pray for our family." The performance was so dramatic, it almost deserved an award. Then came the part that actually crossed the line. Jessica made an anonymous Reddit post. At least she thought it was anonymous. She said she'd gone to a crazy, expensive clinic in San Francisco run by a cold doctor who ruined her mental health. The description matched my practice perfectly. She didn't name me, but it wasn't subtle. It took about an hour before one of my patients sent me the link saying, "This sounds like you." That was enough. I called my lawyer the next morning. He's a calm guy, the kind who never raises his voice but makes people regret trying him. I told him everything, the trip, the posts, the fake accusations. He chuckled halfway through and said, "We'll send them a reminder that defamation has consequences." We sent them by email first, then physical copies overnight. We also filed in-app reports on every platform to flag the content while the letters were processing. That sped things up. 2 days later, the silence was beautiful. Jessica deleted every post. My parents took down their comments, and the anonymous Reddit account mysteriously vanished. Then Dad finally broke and texted me. "We can't believe you'd threaten your own family with a lawsuit. We're already broke from that trip, and now you want to destroy us completely." I typed back. "You did that yourselves." He didn't answer. A few hours later, Mom tried again. "Millie, please stop this. Your father's blood pressure is up. Jessica's in bed crying. You've made your point." I ignored it. I wasn't interested in emotional reruns. That evening, I got another email, short this time. It read, "We're withdrawing everything. We can't afford to fight this." And that was that. They didn't apologize. They didn't take responsibility. They just folded the moment consequences showed up. I didn't reply. The next day at work, a nurse came into my office holding her phone. "Dr. Hull," she said, "is this your sister?" Jessica had tried posting one last dig. Something vague like, "Some people are so obsessed with control they ruin lives." but it barely got 5 likes before she took it down. I smiled at the nurse and said, "Not my problem." By that weekend, everything had gone quiet again. My phone didn't buzz. My email inbox was clean. My house finally felt like mine. No noise, no guilt. On Sunday night, I was sitting on the balcony watching the city lights when a long text came through. It was from Dad, written like some grand moral speech. "We can't believe our own daughter would do this. We gave you everything, and you repay us with humiliation. You embarrassed us in front of the whole family. We raised you better than this." I read it twice, then typed one simple reply. "You replaced me, so I replaced your comfort. Consider us even." Then I hit send, turned off my phone, and leaned back in my chair. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like the background character in their story. I wasn't the helper, the fixer, or the forgotten daughter trying to prove something. I was just me, and that was more peace than any vacation could have bought. The calm lasted 3 solid weeks before the circus rolled back into town. It was a Tuesday morning at the clinic. My last patient had just left, and the waiting room was empty. Security was on standby to keep things private in case any of my family's drama spilled out. I was sitting in my office reviewing lab notes, half a cup of coffee still warm on the desk, when the door burst open without a knock. Dad's face was red, Mom's eyes wild. Behind them stood Jessica, phone already raised, camera recording. "So this is how you treat family?" Dad shouted. "You think this is funny? You think leaving us stranded like animals makes you some kind of hero?" I looked up from my computer, calm as ever. "Good morning to you too." Mom slammed her purse on my desk. "We lost everything. Do you understand that? That trip cost us thousands more because of you." Jessica's voice was sharp and shaky. "She doesn't care, Mom. She's a narcissist. Keep going. I'm recording all of this." I reached for my coffee and took a slow sip, eyes on her. "Jessica," I said flatly, "I don't consent to being filmed. You post that, I'll sue you for defamation, privacy violation, and whatever else my lawyer decides. Sounds fun?" That did it. Her hand wavered. She lowered the phone. Dad stepped forward, pointing a finger at me. "You ruined your parents' retirement trip. You embarrassed us in front of everyone. The neighbors are laughing. The family's laughing. We're broke because of you." "Broke?" I said. "You spent my gift money on a vacation you stole. That's not being broke. That's called math catching up." He slammed his palm on my desk. "You're going to pay us back every cent." I didn't flinch. "No, I'm not." Mom's voice cracked. "We're your parents. How can you talk to us like this?" I leaned back, still holding the coffee mug. "You ruined your own trip the second you swapped the guest list." For a second, no one spoke. Even Jessica froze. Dad's expression twisted like I'd slapped him. "You think you're clever, huh? We raised an ungrateful child." "Yeah," I said. "You raised 2 kids, actually. You just never stopped raising one of them." Jessica gasped. "Oh my God, you're unbelievable." "Thanks," I said. "Now, unless one of you needs medical care, this is my workplace, and I'd appreciate you leaving before I call security." That broke the silence. They spun around and stormed out, Jessica muttering something about exposing me online. The hallway door slammed so hard the frame shook. My nurse poked her head in a second later, eyes wide. "Was that your family?" "Unfortunately," I said, taking another sip. "But they're discharged now." By the afternoon, the smear campaign had begun. It started with a few Facebook posts from Mom, long, teary paragraphs about how their own daughter destroyed their lives, how they were humiliated and penniless, how kindness was repaid with cruelty. Then Dad followed, making phone calls to every relative he could reach, retelling the Greece story but with a creative spin. In his version, I'd hacked their trip, stolen their money, and laughed while they suffered abroad. By Friday, my phone was lighting up with messages from cousins, aunts, and people I hadn't heard from in years. "You went too far, Millie. They're your parents. Show some respect. Everyone makes mistakes. You should have forgiven them." One relative even texted, "You're lucky Grandpa doesn't hear about this. He'd lose it." I smiled. "Perfect," I muttered. "Exactly who I want to hear about it." Sure enough, 2 days later, Grandpa called. Now, my grandfather's not a man who wastes words. Retired military, sharp as ever, the kind of guy who can silence a room just by exhaling. He said, "I've been getting calls all week about you and your parents. I'm done hearing both sides secondhand. We're having dinner tomorrow night. Everyone's coming. We'll settle this like adults." I could hear the clinking of his old pocket watch chain over the phone. It was the sound of finality. "Sure," I said. "Tell everyone I'll be there." He paused. "You're not going to start yelling, are you?" "No, Grandpa," I said, smiling. "I'm bringing receipts, not a megaphone." He chuckled once. "That's my girl." When I hung up, I stared at my calendar. Tomorrow night, 7 o'clock p.m., the grand showdown. Part of me felt exhausted already. Another part felt strangely ready. I wasn't going to explain or beg or justify anything. I didn't need to. They wanted an audience. Fine, let them have one. I spent that night going through my files, the travel receipts, the booking confirmations, the email trails. Every single thing was organized and printed. I wasn't there to argue. I was there to end the noise permanently. Before I left work the next day, I told my receptionist, "If anyone calls claiming to be my mother again, tell them I'm busy for the next 10 years. She laughed, thinking I was joking. That evening, I drove across town to Grandpa's house, the same house that used to host every Thanksgiving when I was a kid. As I parked outside, I could already see silhouettes through the window. Mom pacing, Dad talking with his hands, Jessica scrolling on her phone like it was a shield. Grandpa sat at the head of the dining table, quiet, unmoving. I took a deep breath, straightened my jacket, and walked toward the door. On any other night, this would have been another normal family dinner. But tonight was the night I'd stop being the family's scapegoat and start being the reminder of what boundaries look like. I rang the doorbell once. Grandpa opened it himself, expression unreadable. "Glad you came," he said. "Wouldn't miss it," I replied, stepping inside. The air was thick, the tension almost physical. Everyone turned toward me. This wasn't going to be a fight. It was going to be a reckoning. The whole family was gathered around the table like a court hearing. Grandpa sat at the head in his gray cardigan. His expression said one wrong word, and you're done. Mom sat beside Dad, whispering nervously. Jessica scrolled through her phone, pretending she didn't care. I sat across from them, hands folded, calm as a surgeon before a procedure. Grandpa cleared his throat. The chatter died instantly. "Well," he said slowly, looking straight at me, "I've heard the stories. You stranded your parents in a foreign country, left them broke, humiliated, and furious." He leaned forward, eyes sharp. "That true?" I met his stare. He continued, voice like steel. "Millie, that's not how family treats family. You went too far." I didn't flinch. "They went first." He raised an eyebrow. "Explain." So I did. I told him everything, but not emotionally, just facts. Calm, steady, deliberate. How I'd been helping them with bills since my 20s. How I paid for repairs, birthdays, flights, and emergencies that somehow always benefited Jessica. How I planned the Greece trip, a retirement gift meant to celebrate Dad's hard work. How I saved, booked everything under my account, and wanted to make them proud. Then I told him how it ended before it even began. How they replaced me without a second thought, I said. Dad showed up at the airport with Jessica instead of me. Told me she needed fresh air, that I wouldn't mind giving up my spot. Like it was nothing. Like I didn't exist. Jessica rolled her eyes. "Oh, please, you're exaggerating." I looked at her. "You took my seat on a trip I paid for, Jessica." The room went silent. Even Grandpa didn't interrupt. I continued. "You all humiliated me that day. Not by taking the trip, by proving I never really mattered to this family unless I was paying for something." Mom whispered, "That's not fair." "It's accurate," I said. "You've enabled her for years. Every mistake, every failure, she never faced consequences. I worked my entire life, and you rewarded her laziness by taking my place. So yeah, I let you go to Greece. I just made sure it matched what you gave me. Nothing." Grandpa's expression hardened. He sat back, arms crossed. Dad spoke up, voice rising. "We made a mistake, but what you did was cruel, Millie. We were stranded in another country." "You stranded me in my own family," I said. "You just finally got a taste of it." Jessica slammed her phone down. "This is ridiculous. You're all acting like I'm the villain because I wanted to travel. You're so dramatic." Grandpa turned to her slowly. "Jessica, be quiet." She froze. Grandpa rarely raised his voice, but when he did, the air shifted. He looked at her the way only an old man who's run out of patience can. "You're 37 years old, still living off your parents, and you've got the nerve to act entitled to other people's work? Your sister gives your father the gift of a lifetime and you take it because you needed fresh air? Shameful." Jessica's mouth fell open. "You're taking her side?" "Her side is the only one that makes sense," Grandpa said. "Your parents enabled this, and now they're crying about consequences." Dad started. "We didn't..." Grandpa slammed his hand on the table, making the plates rattle. "Enough! You two raised one child to work for everything and another to expect everything. You took from the wrong one this time." The room went dead silent. He turned to me. "Millie, you got receipts?" I nodded and slid this folder across the table. "Everything. Flights, hotels, refunds. I didn't make a penny from it. just deleted their comfort. Grandpa skimmed a few pages, then looked back at Mom and Dad. You're going to pay her back. Every cent, every booking, every fee. I clarified. Most of the big charges were already refunded or credited back to me. What they owe is just the non-refundable stuff and the hassle they created. Dad's eyes widened. Dad, come on, we can't afford... You should have thought about that before stealing from her, Grandpa cut in. Mom's lip trembled. We didn't steal, we just... You took her gift and gave it away, Grandpa said coldly. If that's not stealing, it's something worse. Jessica crossed her arms. I'm not paying her anything. Grandpa turned to her. You don't have to. You're done. No more help from this family. No money. No excuses. You want to live like an adult? Start acting like one. Jessica shot up from her chair. You're all toxic, every one of you. Grandpa's voice boomed. Sit down. She froze mid-step, eyes wide. He pointed to the door. Actually, forget it. Go. You've said enough. She stormed out, the front door slamming so hard the windows shook. Mom started crying softly. Dad stared down at his plate, speechless. Grandpa stood, still calm. You two owe your daughter an apology. Right now. It took them a moment, but they did. Dad's voice cracked. Millie, we're sorry. You didn't deserve that. Mom nodded through tears. You've always been good to us. We just didn't see it. I nodded. I know. We ate in silence after that. The food was cold, the air heavy. When it was finally over, Grandpa walked me to the door. On the porch, he handed me my folder back. You handled yourself like a woman, he said quietly. You didn't yell. You didn't throw punches. You showed them the truth. That's more powerful than anything. I nodded, smiling faintly. They needed that. He nodded back. They did, but don't carry their mistakes any longer. You did your part. I thanked him and walked to my car. The night air was cool, the streetlights humming softly. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like the outsider of my own bloodline. As I pulled out of the driveway, I glanced in the rearview mirror at Grandpa's house fading behind me. It wasn't just revenge anymore. It was closure.